Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today on the implications of the proposed changes to SNAP. My name's Sean Cash, and I'm a professor at the Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy at Tufts University. I'm also a board member and the program chair of the Council on Food, Agricultural, and Resource Economics. It's CFAIR's mission to translate high-level research and knowledge to a diverse audience that includes policymakers, elected officials, and federal administrators. When we demonstrate the value of the profession to these groups, the Council increases public appreciation for research, extension, outreach, and academic programs in agricultural and applied economics. Our session today includes 3 speakers who joined us about 6 months ago to discuss SNAP and food assistance during the pandemic. During that time, we have continued to see high rates of food insecurity in the United States and have also seen an evolution in the programs and policies that seek to address this issue. Our conversation today will focus on insights about what some of these proposed changes may mean for participants and for society at large. Next slide, please. I'd like to give a quick word of thanks to our partners. This and other CFAIR programming wouldn't be possible without the continuing support of the Agricultural and Applied Economics Association. The U.S. Department of Agriculture's National Agricultural Statistical Service, as well as the Department's Economic Research Service, also provide support. Next slide. Now let's introduce some of our panelists. Shewana McSwain serves as the Cooperative Extension Program at North Carolina Ag and Tech State University as the Expanded Food and Nutritional Education Outreach Coordinator. Next slide. Parke Wilde is a professor at the Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy at Tufts University. And next. And George Davis is a professor at Virginia Tech in the Departments of Ag and Applied Economics, as well as the Department of Human Nutrition, Foods, and Exercise. Next slide, please. We're looking forward to hearing from all of our panelists today, as well as hearing your questions and thoughts.
Now, our first panelist is Shewana McSwain.
Thank you. So the Supplemental Nutrition Assistant Program Education, or SNAP-Ed, is an evidence-based program that helps people lead healthier lives. Many think that SNAP-Ed and SNAP are the same program, but they are not. SNAP-Ed is the educational outreach arm. Next. SNAP-Ed works by building partnerships with all types of community organizations that service limited resource individuals. SNAP-Ed also works in the community to provide social marketing campaigns, hold nutrition education classes, and improve the policy, system, and environment of our participants. Next. During social distance, many SNAP-Ed programs pivoted to offer nutrition education online. This transition allowed SNAP-Ed to reach an even wider audience, including people who face barriers to in-person participation even in the best of times. Next. I would like to talk to you about food insecurity and our SNAP-Ed participants. I have conducted several surveys on what people think when they hear food insecurity. Hunger, limited access, despair, availability, children, and lost are common words that pop up. Despair and lost are strong words, and these are feelings some SNAP-Ed participants relay to the educators during their classes. I'm providing a link to the story about a family that struggles with stretching their food dollars. Brittany shares that they are homeowners. Her husband has a college degree. However, they still struggle with feeding their family. Next. Imagine having a steady job, but suddenly you are laid off because of COVID. You now must seek assistance. Your thoughts are, how will I survive and how will I feed my family? Who shall I turn to for assistance? I only have $30 in my account to feed my family of 4 for the rest of the week. What will I do? Again, these are some of the challenges our SNAP-Ed families are facing, and these are some of the questions our educators are asked on a regular basis. Next. Food insecurity is a major issue that SNAP-Ed families face from day to day. It is hard to hear a single mom choosing between certain bills and food, or hear a senior citizen talk about how difficult it is to make her food dollar stretch to the end of the month. One of SNAP-Ed's focus across the United States is to work with community partners to make sure that families are more food secure. Next. In Tennessee State University, the SNAP-Ed education program has worked to develop webinars for COVID-19 Academy on basic cooking, shopping, and eating skills necessary to feed a family within a budget during exceptional times. Next. To help Illinois residents and families meet their basic needs, University SNAP-Ed program launched a new community food map in early August that allows individuals to search by Illinois zip code for all food resources in that area. The map takes a whole community approach, mapping all helpful food resources, not only food pantries and summer meal sites. The comprehensive food map combines all resources in one geolocation mapping tool, making it convenient for families with limited access to transportation. In addition to locating food pantries, schools, and summer meal sites, households seeking food support will be able to search for the nearest grocery store, food retailer, farmer market, and roadside farm stand that accept SNAP, WIC, or senior food benefits. Families can also search for SNAP and WIC offices to sign up to receive benefits. NC State SNAP-Ed program partnered with 64 emergency food distribution sites to deliver nutrition food card decks to place into boxes and bags of food for people in need. The card decks contains 12 recipes to help families prepare healthy meals from foods they receive. Some of these recipes were Tuscan bean soup, sweet potato pancakes, and apple glazed stir fry. NCA&T SNAP-Ed educators prepared food demonstration videos for those families with internet service and shared them with food banks, food pantries, farmers markets, and faith-based organizations to show families how to make healthy meals from their food boxes. Michigan SNAP-Ed program partnered with the local food pantry to provide refrigeration to increase the consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables, as well as placed My Plate signage in the pantry. Next. Many families participating in SNAP-Ed struggle with internet service, but they still are seeking ways to stretch their food dollars and feed their families healthy meals. North Carolina A&T State University SNAP-Ed program developed the magazine Try Healthy, which is distributed to limited resource families to help them meet their dietary needs. Next. SNAP-Ed works to connect families with community resources to stretch their food dollars. However, families, even with SNAP-Ed education and additional resources, are struggling to feed their families. My colleagues will share some plans that might be in place to help cover the gap SNAP-Ed educators are seeing. Thank you.
The second panelist is Parke Wilde.
Great. So the first presentation addressed a couple things, both the client and family experience of household food security and the risk of food insecurity, and also SNAP-Ed. And both of these together relate to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program's two key objectives, which is to promote food security in the United States and to provide resources to help support higher dietary quality for low-income Americans. Next slide. In the earlier seminar last August, this same panel discussed a number of things. And in my part of the panel, we discussed COVID-induced increases in SNAP caseload, changes to the SNAP benefit, the new pandemic EBT program, which responds to school closures by giving households more resources for use through the EBT card, the debit style card that's used in the SNAP program. SNAP online ordering, which was an initiative that preceded COVID, but was especially timely given new challenges to access to food retailers, and other new initiatives that promote food security and nutrition together. Next slide. Today, given limited time, there's so many interesting discussions going on that relate to SNAP policy, but we'll just focus on a few. Among longer term policies that were in discussion from past farm bills already, even before the COVID-19 times, I want to mention pilot studies that Congress requested from USDA that focused on random assignment interventions in different locations of additional food boxes or additional SNAP type benefits to reduce childhood hunger. And I was editor for this special issue that was published in 2021. So I'll tell you about that in a minute. And the second is ongoing requests from the Farm Bill to have USDA revise periodically the Thrifty Food Plan, the benchmark food bundle that's got a role in SNAP policy. More immediately, and next slide, more immediately, Congress in economic relief packages that are under consideration this week has several direct provisions, of which perhaps the two most important are to extend a 15% increase in the maximum SNAP benefit, which has been in place for a couple months, and also extension of this pandemic EBT program that's additional support for households with children. Next slide, please. So these pilot studies, which just appeared in January in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, describe the impact for people who were not given these additional resources in different parts of the country, including a couple different states and also Native American tribal areas. And the results were mixed, right? So in some cases, these appeared not to be sort of a large enough dose to make a big difference in people's lives. In other cases, they made a difference on food spending, so that you could see the total food resources to the household had increased, but it hadn't reduced, as hoped, the rate of food insecurity in households with children. And in some cases, it had the full desired impact. And so I think you'll find both the articles and the accompanying commentaries interesting just for the mix of different findings that are possible, and thinking about, if we want to make a big difference, how big a dose? Essentially, how much additional resources do families need before you start to notice the effect in reduced household food insecurity? Next slide. So for thinking about the Thrifty Food Plan, we need to understand that it's not the only USDA food plan. The Thrifty Food Plan, is the lowest of 4 benchmark diets, benchmark model diets that USDA uses. And it's the highest profile of the 4 by far, because the multi-billion-dollar Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program has the maximum benefit in most times is pegged to the Thrifty Food Plan for families from a particular size. And so here you can see how much money are we talking about monthly for a family of 4 with children of stipulated ages. And the key point is that the Thrifty Food Plan is not the only plan. Low cost and moderate food plans are used for other policy purposes. For example, sometimes they're used in divorce litigation to figure out what amount of support a former partner might need, and for deciding food budgets needed for people on military installations and so forth. Next slide. So 15% increase in the maximum benefit means that the maximum SNAP benefit is up to $782 monthly for a family of 4. And as noted, this is usually the maximum benefit is the same as the Thrifty Food Plan, but in this case, it's 15% higher just in recent months, and perhaps to be extended for a little bit longer. Next slide. So not everybody gets that maximum benefit. This is the only equation I will burden you with. So the SNAP benefit that a particular household gets equals this maximum benefit minus 30% of whatever net income they have after certain deductions that are allowed, such as like if you have excessive housing expenses, that counts as a certain deduction from your full income that leads to this calculation of net income. And then it's kind of assumed that a low-income household is able to spend not all of its net income, but a certain proportion, 30% of its net income, it can devote towards its food budget, reducing the needs for support from SNAP. And the advantage of this approach, of this type of benefit formula, is that most of the benefits go to people with the greatest need, who are in the deepest poverty, while people with higher net income, up until they reach the eligibility cutoff, get smaller monthly benefits. Next slide. So let's step back from the proposals that are immediately on the table and reflect on some principles about designing the SNAP benefit in a sensible way and thinking about mechanisms for SNAP benefit increase. Policymakers could increase the maximum benefit, or they could reduce the benefit reduction rate. You know, for example, assuming that people are only spending 20% of their net income on their food budget, or they could change the deductions that are allowed in computing net income. Next slide. Even within this option of increasing the maximum benefit, there's sort of like two sub-possibilities. One is you could increase the maximum benefit by sort of letting go of the attachment to the Thrifty food plan and sort of recognizing that that for policy purposes in a prosperous country, we kind of want to make sure that everybody has enough food for even a little more than that rock bottom thrifty level. Or the alternative is to rethink how the cost constraint works in the Thrifty food plan, and perhaps recognize that even sort of the basic bottom of the 4 food plans ought to have a higher benchmark budget as being the minimum that a household can get by with. And in a way, both of these are going on. You can see that policymakers are considering just having the maximum benefit be higher than the Thrifty food plan, but also because the Farm Bill asked USDA to reconsider the Thrifty food plan amount, we're still, there's an ongoing process that's going to lead to a new Thrifty food plan report in 2022. Next slide. So if you want to think through the Thrifty food plan, there's a number of resources. George Davis is an expert in this area and is going to be telling you more about this in the third talk. But I just want to mention that as a sort of a spreadsheet-based tool that's a little bit older now. The link is going to be available to you for a spreadsheet that lets you enter your own model food budget and see how much does it cost, how well does it meet different nutrient guidelines. And even though this isn't exactly the same as the official Thrifty food plan, it gives you a sense of it helps you ground truth what you think are the trade-offs of cost and nutrition and palatability and desirability of a particular food bundle in a model diet. And the connection is explained a little more in my textbook, Food Policy in the United States. Sort of describes different ways of thinking this through. Next slide. And so there's lots of options available to policymakers, including short-term options, longer-term changes in the SNAP benefits through several mechanisms, and also this ongoing, more technical process of revisiting the Thrifty food plan at USDA. Thank you.
Our final panelist is George Davis.
What I want to do is just extend from where Parke talked about, and I want to get into a little bit more of the details in terms of what the plan is for revising the Thrifty food plan. So next slide, please. So as Parke mentioned, and there'll be a little overlap here, Parke mentioned the Thrifty food plan is basically equal to what's called the maximum SNAP benefits. That was increased in October of 2020 by 5.3%, and that was a cost of living adjustment. And then on top of that, in the COVID relief package in 2020, they increased it by the 15% that Parke alluded to. And I think the plan right now is to extend that at least through September 2021. The third issue is related to this re-emphasis on reevaluating the Thrifty food plan. That's what I want to talk about a little bit. And So that was covered in the, that was mentioned in the Farm Bill, and actually more recently in the Executive Order 14,002. So I want to talk about those in a little bit more detail. So next slide. So what is the Thrifty Food Plan? Parke has done a great job of kind of giving us the background of that. Just to remind you, it's the least expensive of the 4 food plans that Parke mentioned, and it's designed to provide adequate nutrition. I think a lot of people get confused. It is not one plan. It is basically designed for 15 different household composition groupings. And so the amount you get in terms of the maximum benefit or the Thrifty Food Plan depends on the size of your family and the composition of the family. Now, the thing I want you to focus on, at least for the rest of my talk here, is that this Thrifty Food Plan has really 4 main components. It has food prices in it. It has food consumption in it. It has food composition data or nutrients, and then it has dietary guidelines. So all of those interact to determine what the Thrifty Food Plan amount is. And as Parke mentioned, it is the basis for the SNAP benefits, and the maximum SNAP benefits are effectively set to be equal to the Thrifty Food Plan amount. So next slide. So why is this reevaluation necessary or important? Well, it turns out that the current Thrifty Food Plan, again, maximum SNAP benefits, is based on 2001 and 2002 data on national average food prices and food consumption, okay? So that's basically 20 years ago, based on data from 20 years ago. Now, I should say that in terms of the prices, those are updated by inflation factors, but by updating prices, food prices by inflation factors, what is implicitly being assumed is the increase in the price of foods has been the same regardless of the food, right? So vegetables have increased at the same rate as meat has increased at the same rate as whole grain. So we know that's not true. So there's probably some possibility of error there. Next slide. So this is what the Farm Bill says in terms of the reevaluation of the Thrifty Food Plan. This is the 2018 Farm Bill. This is section 4002. It says by 2022 and at 5-year intervals thereafter, the Secretary shall reevaluate and publish the market basket of the Thrifty Food Plan based on, and I've highlighted, current food prices, food composition data, consumption patterns, and dietary guidelines. That's all it says. That's it. It's one sentence in terms of reevaluating. And the key thing is, the reason I highlight current is because, as I told you, the current, and pardon the confusion, the current program uses prices and data from 2001 and 2002. So they want to bring that up to date. Now, the Executive Order 14,002 of economic relief to COVID-19 pandemic stated something a little bit more general. Section 2, all executive departments and agencies shall specifically consider actions that facilitate better use of data. Again, I added that highlight. And in doing so, should prioritize actions that provide the greatest relief to individuals and families. So what you see here going on with the Farm Bill and with the Executive Order is a commitment to kind of basically update the Thrifty Food Plan. And the focus is on, essentially, you can see from the Farm Bill, just updating the prices. That's and consumption, okay? So it's just updating the current formula. Next slide, please. So the question becomes, will just updating prices and consumption be enough? Now, this actually, there are 3 limitations of the current Thrifty Food Plan, and we talked about some of these last time, and I just want to remind you, last time being in last meeting in August, I want to remind you of what they were. So 1, the prices and consumption are 20 years old. So yes, it's going to be addressing that. But there are 2 other issues that are not addressed in the language from the Farm Bill or from the Executive Order. 2, this is one we talked about last time. Geographically sensitive prices are not used. What does that mean? So the Thrifty Food Plan uses national average food prices. So it basically assumes the price of food in California or the West is the same as the price of food in Iowa or the Midwest or in New England or in Florida. So what does that mean? That means that everyone the food prices are soon to be the same. And if you live in an area where prices are higher, we know food prices are higher in the West and the Northeast and other regions, then your SNAP benefits are not going to go as far in the West or the Northeast. So they don't take into account the differences in geographical prices. So that's one component. The second component is labor costs are ignored. So remember what the goal here. The goal here is to try to get the cost, an estimate of the cost of a nutritious diet. What the Thrifty Food Plan does is gives the cost of ingredients. So ingredients are not nutrition, right? Because anybody who has ever made a salad, made pasta, made spaghetti, made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich knows that those things don't come together by themselves. You have to do some planning. You have to travel to the grocery store, do shopping. So labor is a key component in terms of creating nutrition, and that cost is ignored. Next slide. So with respect to these two omissions, recent research indicates that in some regions, the TFP may underestimate the cost of a nutritious diet by as much as $100 per month. So what is being assumed is you have enough in those regions when in fact you come up being about $100 short relative to the cost of a nutritious diet. With respect to labor, recent research indicates that the labor cost in home food production is between 40 and 60% of the full cost, okay? And that depends on the household consumption. So this shouldn't surprise you. Anyone who knows anything about most markets is labor in most markets and most products kind of ranges in the 30 to 60% range. So, and that's no different than preparing foods at home. So if you ignore that, obviously you're missing a key component of the cost going into preparation and nutritious diet. Next slide. So conclusion. So the recent policy changes and plan to reevaluate the TFP are certainly steps in the right direction. It certainly needs to be done, updating the prices from 2002, from about 20 years ago to more recent. That work is already underway. Andy Carlson has done some fabulous work in terms of matching the NHANES data, the National Health and Nutrition Survey, with some price data. And so that work is underway right now. However, a more comprehensive reevaluation of the Thrifty Food Plan based on the scientific literature should be conducted to ensure the inadequacy of SNAP benefits is addressed. It's not just updating the prices, it's taking into account some of these other factors that are not being considered. One that I have not mentioned that doesn't really have to do with the Thrifty Food Plan, but one that Parke mentioned is its benefit reduction rate. That benefit reduction rate is based on data from 1955. The percentage of food, of our income spent on food in the United States, is now around 13%. The assumption in that benefit reduction rate is it's 30%. So that's another issue that could be looked at as well in terms of the whole formula. And finally, a lot of these shortcomings I'm pointing out were true before COVID, and they are especially true now. Next slide. Oh, and that's it. And if you have any questions, please contact me. It's easy. George Davis at virginiatech.edu. Thank you.
We also wanted to mention that CFAIR is online at cfair.org, cfare.org, and encourage those who enjoyed this webinar to sign up for our newsletter. We'll get more information on similar events. We're also on Twitter, and all of our programs are available on our YouTube channel. You can find it by searching for our name on YouTube. That's the Council on Food, Agricultural, and Resource Economics. Please follow us and subscribe. We also encourage any and all inquiries. You can email us at information@cfair.org with your questions and comments. Next slide, please. So we'd really like to thank our panelists for their time today and for coming back and giving us updates on the information that you provided 6 months ago. And I'd encourage any audience members who did not see that webinar to go and look on our YouTube for the recording of that session. Finally, we'd like to thank you, the audience. We're passionate about this subject, and we imagine you are too, but we also realize it's not a small thing to give up an hour of your day to spend it with us. And we'd like to ask you to do one more thing before you sign off, and that's to follow us on Twitter. If you enjoyed this event, you might also be interested in our next event on March 15th at 12 noon Eastern Time, a webinar on managing public lands in 2021 and beyond. This is part of a recent partnership with the Association of Environmental and Resource Economics, and we'll be really happy to see you there. Thanks again for attending today's session on the implications of the proposed changes to SNAP. Take care.